The day my daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and said, "I didn't marry you, I married your son, so he belongs to me now," I realized I might lose the only person holding me together after my husband died. My name is Elaine. I'm 69 years old, and I've lived in the same little one-story house in Orange County, California for 42 years. From my back porch on a clear day, I can see a thin sliver of blue where the ocean begins. That house has seen me bring home my newborn son, Daniel, in a car seat far too big for him. It has heard my husband, Jack, singing out of tune in the shower. It has watched me sit on the living room floor with a box of his clothes after the cancer took him so fast I didn't know what year it was anymore. I built a whole life in these rooms, but I never thought I'd have to fight for a place in my own kitchen. Daniel is my miracle baby. After 3 miscarriages and one doctor telling me I should stop trying and accept reality, Daniel arrived at 2 in the morning on a hot August night. Jack cried harder than the baby did. Maybe that's why I held on a little too tight sometimes. When you've nearly lost something before you've even had it, you don't always know how to unclench your fingers. We were an ordinary California family. Jack worked for the county, I worked part-time at the library, and Daniel grew up on a diet of PB&J, public school, and beach days. Jack loved the ocean. He said the waves reminded him that nothing stayed the same, which I always thought was a strange thing to find comforting. Daniel, on the other hand, hated sand in his shoes and would rather have stayed home playing video games. We dragged him anyway, folding chairs on the sand, sunscreen that never quite rubbed in, melted ice cream on his cheeks. Then, life did what it always threatens to do when you're not looking. Jack got sick. He went from just tired to stage 4 in what felt like a commercial break. 6 months later, I was a widow sitting in a too-quiet house, surrounded by casseroles and sympathy cards. The bed felt wrong with only my body in it. The sound of the TV made my head hurt, and the silence was worse. Daniel tried to be strong for me. He moved to Los Angeles for a job in tech support, and he called me on his commute home every evening like clockwork. I would talk him through traffic on the 5, listening to his complaints about customers who didn't know how to restart a router and bosses who thought sleep was optional. On Sundays, he'd drive down, eat my roast chicken, fall asleep on the couch, and leave with Tupperware full of leftovers. I won't pretend I didn't lean on those calls. When you've shared a bed, a mortgage, and a life with someone for over 40 years, and suddenly they're gone, your only child's voice becomes a lifeline. I didn't think of it as pressure. I thought of it as survival. Then he met Megan. He told me about her the way a person describes a product they're afraid you won't like. She was a graphic designer, freelance, did branding and social media for small businesses. She was from Sacramento, had gone to art school, and had moved to LA to be where things were happening. He described her as driven and very modern, which told me more than he realized. The first time she came to my house, she brought tulips. Not the supermarket kind I buy for myself, but nice ones, wrapped in paper with a little ribbon. She was pretty in a magazine sort of way. Long auburn hair twisted into a messy bun that I know for a fact took at least 20 minutes to make look that casual. High cheekbones, perfect eyeliner, a sundress that probably cost more than my entire outfit. "Mrs. Harris," she said, leaning in for one of those air kisses I'd only ever seen on TV, "I've heard so much about you." "Please call me Elaine," I said, "or Mom if you ever feel like it." I meant it as a joke, just something people say to break the ice. For a split second, her smile faltered. It was small, but I saw it. Then she laughed. "We'll see," she said. We had a nice evening, if you looked at it from the outside. She complimented my cooking, even though the roast was drier than I like. She told stories about ridiculous clients and brand identities like it was life or death. She made Daniel laugh in that teenage boy way I hadn't heard in years. It was only when I was lying in bed that night, replaying the conversation, that I realized how often she'd circled back to the house. "So you own this place?" she'd asked, glancing around my modest little kitchen. "Like, outright?" "Yes," I'd said. "We paid it off 10 years ago." "Wow," she'd breathed. "In this market, you're sitting on a gold mine." She'd said it like a compliment. My stomach had tightened anyway. In California, everyone talks about the housing market the way farmers talk about the weather. So I told myself not to be paranoid, but the feeling stayed. The changes came slowly, the way cracks appear in a glass long before it shatters. Daniel stopped coming every Sunday. First it was traffic, then gas prices, then work stuff, then Megan has a client meeting, or we already made plans with friends. Our calls grew shorter. I started getting more texts than phone calls, little updates, emojis, pictures of food instead of his actual face. When they got engaged, I cried real, happy tears. I did. I'm not one of those mothers who wants her son miserable and alone. I bought champagne, hugged them both, and tried not to think about how Jack should have been there to toast with us. I imagined grandbabies in this house, sticky fingers on my coffee table, little voices yelling, "Grandma!" from the hallway. Megan had a different vision. "We're doing a small ceremony in Malibu," she said, scrolling through her phone to show me mood boards. "Just close friends and immediate family. Adults only. Very curated." Curated? That was a new one for me. "And Thanksgiving?" I asked lightly. "You'll still come here, I hope. Tradition is tradition." She smiled, that polite, closed-lipped smile people give when they're about to say no without saying the word. "We're still talking about it," she said. "We want to create our own traditions, you know? We can't just keep repeating what our parents did forever." I heard what she wasn't saying. "We're not building our marriage around your table." That first year, they went to her parents' house in Sacramento. Vineyard, catered food, matching sweaters. They sent pictures. I smiled at my phone and microwaved turkey for one. I told myself this was normal. Kids grow up, people split holidays, things change. The day Megan told me my son belonged to her, it was the Santa Ana winds that woke me up. If you don't live in Southern California, you might not know what that feels like. It's a hot, dry wind that blows from the desert, rattling everything it touches. It sets people on edge, makes dogs bark more, and tempers shorter. Fire season and migraine season rolled into one. My backyard fence had been leaning for weeks. One of the posts had rotted at the base, and now that section of fence was sagging toward the neighbor's yard. Their dog, a stubborn little mutt named Chico, had started using the gap as his personal shortcut. My rose bushes were filing complaints every time he barreled through. Daniel had promised to come down and help me fix it. "I'll bring my tools," he'd said. "We'll knock it out in a couple of hours. It'll be good to work on something that isn't a screen." So I got up early, brewed coffee, put on a pot of chili, and picked up a box of donuts from the good place on the corner. I laid everything out on the counter and waited for the sound of his car in the driveway. 10 o'clock came and went. By 11, the coffee was lukewarm and my heartbeat was not. I called. It went to voicemail. I texted. "Everything okay?" 30 minutes later, my doorbell finally rang. The relief that flooded me evaporated the second I saw their faces. Daniel stood on the porch with the expression of a man walking into court. Megan stood beside him, arms crossed, sunglasses on, even though the porch was shaded. "Hi, honey," I said, opening the door wider. I was starting to worry. "We need to talk, Mom," Daniel said. I hate those words. They never precede anything good. We sat at the kitchen table. Daniel took his usual seat, but he perched on the edge like he might need to flee. Megan stayed standing at first, one hand resting on the counter, fingers spread like she was bracing herself. "Elaine," she began, using my name like we were at a business meeting, "I know Daniel told you he would help with the fence today, but we've talked, and this can't keep happening." I stared at her. I asked, You mean him helping his mother? She gave a tight, practiced smile. I mean this pattern, she said. Every time something breaks, every time you feel lonely or anxious, you call Daniel and he drops everything and drives down here. It's not sustainable. He works full time. We have our own apartment, our own responsibilities. He can't be your husband and your handyman and your therapist. That's not healthy. Heat crept up my neck. I looked at Daniel, but he kept his eyes on the table. Megan, he said softly, maybe we can explain this a little gentler. She lifted her hand slightly without taking her eyes off me, and he went silent. That small gesture told me more about their marriage than any Instagram caption. I'm going to be very clear, she said, because dancing around it doesn't help anyone. I didn't marry you, Elaine. I married your son. That means my primary loyalty is to him, and his primary loyalty is to me. From now on, we're going to have boundaries. You can't expect him to come running every time there's a loose screw or a lonely Sunday. You're going to have to hire people, like everyone else. She said it so calmly, like she was explaining a cancellation policy. Something in the air like smoke. I didn't marry you. I married your son. He belongs to me now. Something in me went very still. Is that how you see it? I asked, my voice quieter than I felt. That he belongs to you? I mean, he's my husband, she said, unblinking. He's my family now. Our marriage comes first. That's what a healthy relationship looks like. My therapist says. I held up my hand this time. I don't care what your therapist says about me, I said. I care what my son thinks. Daniel? He finally looked up, torn between us. Mom, he began, I love you. You know that. But I'm tired. I feel like I'm constantly being pulled in two directions. Work, you, Megan, the idea of kids someday. I get a call about your fence, your internet, your light bulb, your doctor. I answer every text because I feel guilty when I don't. I don't know how to say no without feeling like I'm failing you. It hurt, because there was truth in what he said. Grief had turned him into my emergency contact for everything, and I hadn't noticed how heavy that jacket was on his shoulders. So, instead of telling me you feel overwhelmed, I said, slowly, you let your wife come here and tell me my son belongs to her, and I should treat him like a stranger I have to schedule through an app. That's not what I said, Megan snapped. It's exactly what you said, I replied. She took a breath, then leaned forward, palms flat on the counter. What I'm saying is this, she said. You need to get other support in your life. Friends, professionals, community, not just Daniel. That's too much pressure. That's how enmeshment happens. That's how people end up in codependent relationships that ruin marriages. I'm not letting that happen. Enmeshment, codependent, therapist words being used like weapons. A picture flashed in my mind of younger me, 35 years old, up at 2 a.m. with a feverish toddler. Jack asleep in the next room because he had to work early. Me holding Daniel against my chest until his breathing evened out. Nobody called that codependent. They called it being a mother. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I'm sorry my existence is so inconvenient for your marriage, I said. Next time my fence falls down, I'll make sure to ask your permission before I ask your husband to hold a hammer. Mom, Daniel murmured. You get to have your feelings, Megan said, an edge of impatience bleeding through her calm tone. But so do we. I grew up with a mother who made me her entire emotional support system. I had to raise her. It was suffocating, and it ruined my childhood. I promised myself that when I got married, I wouldn't repeat that pattern. I won't let my husband be someone else's emotional crutch. So you see me as your mother all over again, I said. And Daniel as the little girl you used to be? She blinked, just once. This isn't about you personally, she said. It's about boundaries, healthy boundaries. It feels pretty personal from where I'm sitting, I said. The worst part was, underneath all my anger, there was a small, guilty voice whispering that she had a point. I had been calling a lot. I had been handing every anxiety to Daniel like it was his job to fix my life now that his father was gone. I just hadn't realized how suffocating that might feel for him, because for me, it felt like breathing. I took a long, slow breath, then another, counting to 4 the way my doctor taught me when my blood pressure first started creeping up. Okay, I said, you want boundaries. I hear you. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop asking Daniel to fix every broken thing. I'm going to find a handyman. I'm going to call a plumber when the sink leaks instead of my son. I'm going to get a life that doesn't revolve around his schedule. I should have done that sooner. That part, I'll own. Megan's shoulders lowered a fraction of an inch, like she thought she'd won. But understand something, You married a man who has a mother who loves him. That doesn't disappear because it makes your therapist uncomfortable. I don't own him. I never did. But neither do you. You don't get to stand in my kitchen and speak about me like I'm some disease he needs to cut out of his life to be healthy. Megan looked away first. We should go, she said, pushing back from the counter. We've said what we came to say. Daniel stood up slowly. Mom, he said, his voice softer, I do love you. I just need to figure out how to be a husband, too. That's all. I hope you do, I said, and I hope when you do, you pick someone who understands that love isn't a pie you run out of. It's more like, I don't know, coffee. You pour it into a lot of cups, and somehow there's always another pot to brew. It was a clumsy metaphor, but grief and anger don't make for great poetry. After they left, I sat at the table and looked at the plate of donuts nobody had touched. The Santa Ana winds hissed against the windows. Chico barked in the neighbor's yard. My chest felt hollow and full at the same time, like someone had scooped me out and forgotten to close the lid. That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay there thinking about boundaries. I thought about how easily people my son's age labeled everything toxic and trauma and unhealthy, how quickly they cut people off and called it healing. I thought about my own part in this mess, about how I'd grabbed onto Daniel after Jack died like a life raft, without noticing that he was trying to swim for his own shore. In the morning, I made a decision. If we were going to have boundaries, they were going to be mine too. I called my neighbor, Jorge, instead of my son. About time, he said, when I asked if he could help with the fence. You think I haven't seen you out there poking at it with that little garden shovel? I'll bring my grandson on Saturday. He needs to learn how to use a post hole digger. We fixed the fence in an afternoon. Jorge's grandson asked a million questions, then declared me pretty cool for an old lady. I paid them in cash and lasagna, and for the first time in a long time, I felt capable instead of helpless. Then I drove to the senior center on Chapman Avenue and filled out the forms I'd been ignoring for months. I signed up for Tai Chi in the park, a book club that met on Thursdays, and a support group for people who had lost spouses. I met a woman named Patricia who wore too much perfume and told stories about her ex-husband that made me laugh so hard my side ached. I found a handyman, a real one, who charged a fair rate and didn't talk down to me. I put his number in my phone under House. The next time a light fixture flickered, I dialed that number instead of Daniel's. Then I did something that would have made Megan proud if she'd heard about it. I got a therapist of my own, a real one, not a podcast or a quote on Instagram. Sitting on a soft chair in a beige office, I told this stranger about my life. About Jack, about Daniel, about the sentence in my kitchen that felt like a slap. It sounds like you've been through 2 big losses, my therapist said. Your husband's death and then a kind of demotion in your son's life. Demotion is exactly what it feels like, I said. One day I'm his person, the next day I'm something he has to manage. She nodded. And it also sounds like, after Jack died, you put a lot of your emotional weight on Daniel, she added, gently. Maybe more than was fair for him to carry. I fiddled with the hem of my sweater. I did. I did. I didn't want to, but I did. He was the only one there. Grief makes us grab onto whoever's closest, she said. That doesn't make you evil. It makes you human. The important part is what you do now that you can see it. So I kept going. Week after week, I untangled years of habits and fears. I learned how to sit with my own loneliness without stuffing it into a phone call. I learned how to say, I need help to people who weren't my son. I learned how to enjoy my own company again in this old house with its creaky floors and stubborn faucet. Meanwhile, I called Daniel less. I answered when he called, but if I was at Tai Chi or book club, I let it go to voicemail and called back later. When I sent him pictures, they were of sunsets, lemon bars, and my ridiculous friend Patricia in her sequined visor, not of broken appliances or scary letters from the insurance company. After a few weeks, he noticed. "You've been busy," he said over the phone one night, a hint of something like awe in his voice. "Who are you, and what have you done with my mother, who was always home and always available?" "I took your wife's advice," I said lightly. "I got a life." He laughed, but there was a crack in it. "I didn't mean you had to disappear," he said. I don't know what I meant." "Maybe you meant you were drowning and you didn't know how to tell me without hurting my feelings," I said. "And maybe I needed to hear it, even if it came out like a punch." He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe," he said. I thought that might be the end of it. We'd drift into a quieter, more polite version of our relationship. Holidays would be negotiated like trade deals, and Megan would always be that slightly sharp presence at the edge of my life. I would build my small routines around people who actually enjoyed being with me. It wasn't the life I'd imagined, but it was better than begging for scraps of my own son's time. Then, one night, my phone rang at 11:52 p.m. When your phone rings that late and you have a child, no matter how old they are, your heart goes straight to the worst. "Hello?" I said, already pushing back the covers. "Mom?" Daniel's voice came through, raw and shaky. "Are you awake?" "I am now. What's wrong?" "I'm outside," he said. I opened the front door to find him standing on the porch, eyes red, shoulders slumped, looking more like my 12-year-old who'd struck out at baseball than the grown man who'd stood at an altar in Malibu. He stepped inside, and the smell of his cologne hit me, mixed with the faint scent of the ocean that always clings to him after a long drive. He dropped onto the couch like his bones had given up. "We had a fight," he said, "Megan and me." I sat down in my old armchair facing him. "What happened?" I asked. He rubbed his face with both hands. "She said she's done competing with you," he said. "She said if I won't go no contact with you, then I'm not serious about our marriage. She wants me to block your number, change my phone, everything. She said no more calls, no more visits, no more holidays unless she approves them. She said her therapist says it's the only way for her to heal." His voice broke on that last word. "She wants a husband with no baggage," he added bitterly. "That's what she called you, baggage." For a second, the room swayed. I grabbed the arm of my chair to steady myself. "Did you agree to that?" I managed. He shook his head violently. "No," he said. "I told her I couldn't, that you're my mother, that you helped me survive Dad dying, and you've been working so hard to give us space. I told her you started therapy. I told her about Jorge and the senior center. She said it's not enough, that as long as you're in my life, I'll always be enmeshed." He let out a humorless laugh. "Mom, I started wondering if I grew up in some horrible, twisted house I just didn't see," he said. "Like maybe I'm blind to how bad it was." I thought about our life, about the times I'd lost my temper and shouted, about the lean years when we'd snapped at each other over bills, about the night I missed his band concert because Jack's car broke down and we only had one that worked. There were mistakes, plenty. There was tension, tears, slammed doors. But there was also homework at the kitchen table, Saturday pancakes, inside jokes, hugs that lasted a second too long for his teenage coolness, but he never quite pulled away. We had our problems, I said slowly. Every family does. I yelled when I was tired. Your father buried himself in work when he was scared. We made bad decisions sometimes. But we loved you. We tried. We said we were sorry when we messed up. That's not nothing. Tears spilled over onto his cheeks. That's what I remember too, he said. But when someone keeps telling you a story about your own life and they use all the right words, you start to wonder if your memory is the one that's wrong. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to tell him I'd always known Megan's language sounded more like war than healing. I wanted to remind him of the day she stood in my kitchen and claimed ownership over him like he was a car title. Instead, I got up and made tea, because sometimes the only thing you can do with a heart that's cracking open in front of you is put a warm mug in its hands. Later, at the kitchen table, he stared into his cup. I'm sorry for that day, he said suddenly. The fence, the way we talked to you, I've replayed it so many times. I can't believe I just sat there and let her talk to you like that. I felt like such a coward, but I didn't know how to stand up to her without breaking everything. I'm sorry too, I said, for putting so much weight on you after your dad died. I should have found help sooner. I should have built a bigger life for myself instead of making you the center of it. We sat there, two people admitting we'd both been wrong and both been hurt. It didn't magically fix anything, but the air in the room changed. It felt less like a courtroom and more like a hospital, messy and painful, but aimed at healing. What are you going to do? I asked quietly. He let out a long breath. I don't know, he said. I love her, I married her, I meant my vows, but I can't agree to erase you from my life so she can feel safe. That feels wrong in my bones. I can't do it. Whatever you decide, I said. I'm your mother, not your judge. I don't want to be the reason a marriage ends. I also don't want you to spend the rest of your life with someone who thinks love only counts if it's exclusive. He stayed in the guest room that night for the first time in years. In the morning, I made pancakes, like I did when he was little. He ate 3, then hugged me at the door. Thank you, he said into my shoulder, for not saying, I told you so. I thought it loudly, I admitted, but I kept it to myself. Growth, you know. He laughed, and for a second I heard my teenage boy again. Over the next few months, they went to counseling together. Real counseling this time, with someone who didn't turn every problem into a clean cut and a blocked number. Megan had to face the fact that I wasn't her mother, and Daniel had to face the fact that he couldn't be everyone's savior. I stayed in my lane. I went to my classes, my appointments, my senior dances. I prayed for them, cried for them, and answered the phone when it rang without squeezing it to death. One Saturday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Megan alone, no Daniel in sight. She wore jeans, sneakers, and a sweatshirt, not a curated outfit. Her hair was scraped into a ponytail, and she looked smaller without her armor of confidence. Hi, she said. Can I come in? I thought about saying no, I really did, but I stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place she'd delivered her first verdict on my role in my own son's life. She wrapped her hands around a mug of coffee like it was something to hold on to. I owe you an apology, she said. I said nothing. I've learned the power of silence. I thought I was being strong, she went on. I thought I was protecting myself and my marriage. I grew up with a mother who leaned on me for everything. She'd call me at work and talk for hours about how lonely she was, how unfair my father was, how nobody I never got to be just a kid. When I heard how often you called Daniel, when I saw how quickly he'd drop everything, I panicked. I saw my childhood all over again, and I decided I wasn't going to live it twice. She took a shaky breath. But I didn't see you, she admitted. I just saw her, and I attacked you like you were my mother. She looked up, eyes wet. I was wrong to talk to you the way I did, she said. I was wrong to say he belongs to me like I own him. I was wrong to act like the only way to fix our marriage was to cut you out like some tumor. Your therapist doesn't know you because I never really gave her the full picture. I took my pain and wrapped it around your face. A part of me wanted to make her squirm. A part of me wanted to list every hurt, every word that had kept me awake at night. Instead, I thought about Daniel, torn between the two of us, and about how many women my age would give anything for even the possibility of peace with the woman their son married. You hurt me, I said, because truth is still important. Deeply. I know, she whispered. I don't expect you to forget it. I needed you to know that Daniel didn't imagine the childhood he had. You really did love him and do your best. That's his story. It was wrong of me to try and rewrite it. We sat there in the kitchen, two women from different generations, both carrying mothers in our bones. I'm not perfect, I said finally. I did lean on him too much after his father died. I have been guilty of calling when I should have journaled. I'm learning. But I am not your mother, and I won't be punished for her sins. She nodded, tears leaking onto her cheeks. That's fair, she said. More than fair. We're not suddenly best friends. This isn't a movie where we hug and go shopping together and I start calling her my daughter in slow-motion montages. Some days are still tense. Some holidays are still awkward. Sometimes she says something sharp, and I have to bite my tongue instead of snapping back. Sometimes I misjudge and offer an opinion where I should have just listened. We are all, each of us, learning. But things are different now. When she comes over, she asks me about my Tai Chi class. I ask about her latest design project without rolling my eyes. When something breaks in my house, I still call the handyman. When I feel lonely, I still feel it, instead of stuffing it into my son's voicemail. And once in a while, when we're all sitting here at this same kitchen table, Daniel will put his arm around Megan and reach his other hand out to squeeze mine. In that moment, I see it clearly. Love isn't a ladder with only room for one at the top. It's a circle. Sometimes lopsided, sometimes messy, sometimes frayed in places, but a circle nonetheless. If you're an older mother like me, wondering when your son stopped feeling like your boy and started feeling like someone else's property, I know how much that can hurt. If you're a daughter-in-law drowning in someone else's expectations and afraid of repeating the worst parts of your childhood, I know you're carrying a weight too. We're all bleeding from somewhere. Here's what I've learned, sitting in this old California house with the fence finally fixed and the ocean still just a sliver in the distance. I don't own my son. His wife doesn't own him either. He is a person, not a prize. I can build a life big enough that his love feels like a blessing, not a necessity. I can learn to stand up straight without using his shoulders as my crutches. I can ask for help without demanding it only from him. And if someone stands in your kitchen and says, I didn't marry you, I married your son, he belongs to me now, you are allowed to quietly, firmly, in your own heart, answer, no, he belongs to himself, and I belong to myself, and I will build a life that no one can take away from me, no matter who they marry.